welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from our Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news, and we begin specifically talking about Venezuela because President Nicolás Maduro has condemned Colombia's President Iván Duque for rejecting his offer to re-establish consular relations and also address Colombia's extradition request for former Colombian Senator Aida Merlano, who was recently captured in Venezuela.
Today, President Iván Duque declared that he will not open consular relations with Venezuela because there is violence in Venezuela. But I wonder where violence really is, in Venezuela or in Colombia. Senator Aida Merlano was legally captured following a red alert from Interpol's Colombian branch. Now, the Colombian government needs to initiate, as countries always do, the legal process of requesting her extradition. But the Colombian government, Iván Duque, doesn't want her to be extradited. That's the truth. I tell this to Colombians. He doesn't want the extradition of this senator. And what's more, perhaps, they even added her escape from Colombia so she won't confess everything she knows. They supported her escape from Colombia and believed that if we in Venezuela weren't going to search for her and we weren't going to capture her, they were expecting that, weren't they?
President Maduro also talked about the number of Colombian fugitives captured in Venezuela who cannot be officially extradited since the Colombian president refuses to re-establish consular relations between the two countries.
At the request of Interpol, we have more than 30 people captured in Venezuela over the last 2 or 3 years. And Duque doesn't request their extradition because of his ideological estimates. Among these people captured in Venezuela, who all know Duque is not interested in their extradition, we have Wilfrido de Jesus Torres Gomez, alias Necloqui, leader of the Los Rastrojos gang. Why Duque doesn't want us to hand over the head of the Los Rastrojos gang? Because he can tell many things about the Duque government's relationship with Los Rastrojos gang.
The World Health Organization has declared China's novel coronavirus outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. The announcement came at the end of an emergency meeting of the World Health Organization in Geneva. It also followed the first confirmed case of person-to-person transmission outside China in the United States. So far, more than 15 countries have confirmed cases of illness. Meanwhile, the WHO chief reiterated the organization's confidence in China's ability to contain the virus.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern over the global outbreak of novel coronavirus. The main reason for this declaration is not because of what is happening in China, but because of what is happening in other countries. Our greatest concern is the potential for the virus to spread to countries with weaker health systems and which are ill-prepared to deal with it.
And the World Health Organization has published an updated report on the status of the coronavirus outbreak. And this is the report on the coronavirus. Globally, there have been 7,818 confirmed cases. In China, 7,736 confirmed cases, 12,167 suspected, 1,370 severe, and 170 deaths. Outside China, there have been 82 confirmed cases in 18 countries. And the World Health Organization risk assessment on this image, China is very high, and regional level is high, and global level is also high. On this report, and the World Health Organization states that there are now 98 cases of the 2019 nCoV, the coronavirus cases, in 18 countries outside China, including 8 cases of human-to-human transmission in 4 countries, Germany, Japan, Vietnam, and United States. The World Health Organization has previously declared an international public health emergency 5 times before this one. In 2009, the H1N1, the 2014 polio, the 2014 Ebola in West Africa, in 2016, the Zika, and in 2019, the Ebola in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and now this acute respiratory disease. Meanwhile, India has registered the first case of the novel coronavirus in the state of Kerala, according to the government press service. The patient is an Indian student at China's Wuhan University. He is stable but quarantined in a local hospital. Around 800 people who recently returned from China to Kerala, the state, are now under observation for any symptoms of the coronavirus.
Yesterday 10 results come out of 20 and all the 10 were negative. But today the National Virology Institute reported that 1 case is positive.
And Russia is closing its border with China to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus. The Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin announced that measure at a government meeting in Moscow. 16 out of the 25 crossing along the 4,000-kilometer Russian-Chinese border will be closed from midnight on Friday. Russia's foreign ministry has also suspended the issuing of electronic visas to Chinese nationals and advised Russians to avoid all trips to China. So far, there have been no reported cases of the virus in Russia.
Today, we are informing everyone about measures taken to close the border with China in the Far East. We have to do everything to protect our people.
And Spain has announced details on the repatriation plan for 20 of its citizens in China, an operation that demands a 14-day quarantine for returnees.
When these citizens, these compatriots, arrive in Spain, they will be assisted at Madrid's Gómez Ulla Hospital. As you know, this hospital depends on the Defense Ministry. They will spend 14 days in quarantine, with the best guarantees for them and the rest of the Spaniards.
Like this, we go for a break. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. We'll be right back.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis, and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dotting the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
We are back with our news. Argentine President Alberto Fernandez has arrived to the Vatican City, the first stop of his European tour. The official meeting with Pope Francis is scheduled for this Friday. Among the topics to be discussed is the launching of the Argentinian plan against hunger, which Fernandez had proposed before assuming the presidency last December. Fernandez tour also includes several countries of the European Union, including Germany, Spain, and France. In Brazil, at least 66 people have died and other 4 are reported missing after heavy rains and flooding hit southeastern Brazil. The streets were flooded and cars swept away in Brazil's 3rd biggest city, Belo Horizonte, by the worst storm registered this Tuesday night. January has been the wettest month there for over 100 years. The rains have forced more than 80,000 people from their homes in the states of Minas Gerais, Espírito Santo, and Rio de Janeiro. Social movements say the flooding has been worse because of the collapse of mining dams in the region in recent years.
After the collapse of the dams in Fundão and Feijão, specialists have studied the river and say these floods are much worse than previous ones. But the data shows this clearly, where with a smaller rise in the level of the river, the waters spread much further into the houses than before. In the floods of 2013, so we are demanding that the justice system acts to hold the Vale mining company responsible for making this flooding worse, and that it pays compensation.
And the Mexican President Manuel Lopez Obrador has answered the allegation of U.S. President Donald Trump, who said that Mexico is paying for the construction of the border wall. Let's find out more on the following story.
From the National Palace, President Manuel Lopez Obrador refused to confront his U.S. counterpart, who assured that Mexico is doing a great job on restraining migration flows.
Let's not forget, even if we don't have to say anything about it, that there are going to be elections in the United States. These are special times, and our relationship with the U.S. government is good, so we don't want to fight.
The U.S. President's speech often mentioned his southern neighbor, which in several occasions expressed its disagreement with the construction of the border wall.
With respect to Mexico, we like Mexico very much, and we've gotten along great with Mexico, and the President's a friend of mine, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. It's a tough situation. But Mexico is, in fact, you will soon find out, paying for the wall, okay?
This topic became even more important days after the National Guard detained a migrant caravan for entering illegally through the Suchiate River at the border with Guatemala.
De manera ordenada, segura y de manera regular.
Migrants' rights organizations criticized the actions of Mexican authorities who have prevented thousands of Central Americans from entering the country to reach the United States border.
The National Migration Institute remains intact. In previous governments, we had the Southern Border Plan, which we can't forget. Mexico has long been a nation with open arms, but there have also been a lot of historic criticism of our policies in regards to migration.
Despite this, thousands of Central Americans have crossed Mexico by now. Official numbers say there are about 62,000 migrants at the northern border requesting asylum in the United States.
And from Mexico, we move on to the Caribbean. Dominica's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit is assuring landowners who have concluded negotiations with the government for the construction of a new international airport that their funds will be dispersed soon. This as he expressed gratitude to China for its assistance in the project.
And so I want to thank the government of the People's Republic of China for this and for their commitment to financing it, because we all know that it would be impossible for us as a nation, to finance the airport by ourselves. And so to have a friend and a developing partner like China, you know, who's committed to assisting us with the construction of the airport is certainly a wonderful gift to the people of Dominica.
And we make a second and very short break. You stay tuned with us.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
We are back with our news. The Syrian army continues its campaign to regain the Idlib province, with the returning to the city of Ma'arat al-Numan to government control this Thursday. Ma'arat al-Numan, a former rebel hotspot which has turned into a ghost town after months of bombardment, lies on a key highway connecting the capital Damascus to Aleppo. A military spokesperson said the army seeks to hunt down all remaining armed terrorist groups until all Syrian soil has been cleansed of terrorism. This as Syrian government forces backed by Russian air power have stepped up the campaign to take control of the province. The last rebel stronghold where millions took refuge after fleeing other parts of Syria earlier in the war.
We are 7 kilometers from Sarakev town, and the offensive will continue until we repel all armed groups from the Syrian land and liberate all the country.
United States House of Representatives has approved a bill that restricts the power of President Donald Trump to launch military actions against Iran. With 288 votes in favor and 175 against, the bill prevents the Department of Defense from providing funds for military actions against Iran without the prior approval of Congress. The move comes just weeks after President Donald Trump green-lighted a U.S. drone attack that killed a top Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani, and led to increased tensions with Tehran. And the United States, also some experts say Trump has made yet another mistake, which will cause great setbacks to the Israeli-Palestinian peace process.
Doesn't seem to have any chance of moving the peace process forward. In fact, in many ways, it's a setback to the prospects of peace, because what it does on all of the major negotiating issues that were to be discussed in negotiations were decided unilaterally and generally in the favor of Israel. The Palestinians have not been part of the process, and the people who negotiated for the United States do not have an understanding of the Palestinian perspective.
The so-called Middle East peace deal proposed by the United States and Israel continues to receive widespread criticism. Few days after U.S. President Donald Trump delivered a multi-stage plan, protests continue in several parts of the globe, particularly in the Arab world. The main criticism leveled at the supposed peace deal has been that it completely neglects the demands of the Palestinian people to return to their lands by recognizing Israel's illegal settlements.
We reject this deal and will reject any deal or political plan from anyone around the world that diminishes Palestinian rights from our land, from our Jerusalem, from our right to return, our right for resistance, our Palestinian unity, our sovereignty over the land, and our sovereignty in decisions. This is a deal that we completely reject, and we are sure that it will fail. We won't wait for it to fail, but we will make it fail.
And a senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader described the deal as a continuation of Crusaders and Zionist objectives, pledging Iran's support for the Palestinian people.
This is a plan that consists of selling and dismantling Muslim lands, and whose objective is the realization of the goal of the Crusaders and Zionists. The Islamic Republic will certainly not remain silent. The Iranian people, guided by the supreme leader, continue to consider the Palestinian struggle as the principal concern of the Muslim world.
And as announced, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan and other concern issues in the Middle East. Our correspondent in Moscow, Lisandra Andres, has the details. Welcome.
Russian President Vladimir Putin met this Thursday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Moscow to discuss the details of the so-called agreement of the century presented by the United States President Donald Trump. The plan proposed a two-state solution from the long-lasting territorial dispute between Israel and Palestine. According to Russian news agency TASS, the two leaders spent long hours to analyze how Trump's proposed plan will impact the region. They have also talked about the latest development in Syria and the importance of diplomatic relations between Russia and Israel. Meanwhile, political analysts said that Trump's Middle East peace plan is destined for failure, as negotiations didn't really include Palestinian authorities, and therefore Netanyahu is determined to seek the support of other world powers like Russia. Before returning to Israel, Netanyahu also met Nahmat Issachar, a dual United States Israeli national who was detained on charges of drug trafficking in Russia last year, but was pardoned by President Putin on January 29th at Netanyahu's request.
Thank you, Lisandra. That was Lisandra Andres from Moscow. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has heavily criticized President Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan, calling it an invasion project. Let's hear his exact words.
Now, they are calling it as the deal of the century. I will mention it in my speech tomorrow. Deal of the century? What deal are you talking about? This is not a deal, it's an invasion project.
And we move on from topic, but we stay in the Middle East. The Iraqi police have resorted to using pellet rifles to disperse anti-government protesters. The security forces fired at protesters in central Baghdad as they continue demonstrating against the government. They are demanding that the current political leaders step down, and they are also calling for the United States military to withdraw from their country. And this Friday, around 3 million coins commemorating United Kingdom's withdrawal from the European Union will go into circulation. The 50-penny coin features the world peace, prosperity, and friendship with all nations, and the Brexit date 31st January 2020. Another 7 million such coins minted to mark the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union will enter into circulation later this year. However, people who do not want to wait to spot a Brexit 50-penny in their loose change could go online instead and buy the commemorative coin. The Royal Mint has produced versions for sale which range from 10 pennies from from 10 pounds for a brilliant uncirculated 5-penny coin to 945 pounds for a limited edition gold coin. And police in India have arrested a man who opened fire during protests against a new citizenship law in the capital, New Delhi. The man fired a single-barrel gun at demonstrators before being apprehended by police. Luckily, no one was injured. Meanwhile, his motives are not yet unknown. Protests against the citizenship law started in December last year and are continuing despite security forces crack down on demonstrators.
He walked out in front of the protesters holding a 3.15 caliber golden gun. He was in front of all the people, protesters, and policemen who were standing nearby. But he jumped in from the side, brandished the gun and said, "Come, I will give you freedom." Everybody said. The media recorded the scene and then he backed off as the policeman approached him. And after that, he fired in front of himself, not up or down. And he repeated, "Come, today I will give you freedom."
And at least 9 people have been killed and thousands displaced by flash floods and landslides in Indonesia. Residents fled their homes to temporary shelters, and heavy rains sparked disaster in North Sumatra. Local authorities have attributed the catastrophe to illegal logging, which might have loosened the soil, making it susceptible to mudslides.
The victims were swept away by the water. They happened to be riding a minibus when they were struck in the flooding. They were swept away and hit logs.
We have deployed all available resources. Even I myself is on the ground. In my opinion, this area had never got heavy flooding like this before.
Like this, we've come to the end of this brief, but remember, you can find this and much more other information on our website, toasterenglish.net, where you can read opinion articles, watch special interviews, and find so much more other material that we produce especially for you.